I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Oconee County Planning Commission. This is November the 20th, Monday at 6 o'clock. Our first order of business is invocation. Mr. Nix, would you please, sir?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you will. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. And Father, we ask for a special prayer tonight for Deputy Watts and his family, that he makes a full recovery and that the family meets with resolve and resolution and comfort. And we ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Madam, please.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. You have before you the minutes of our last meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any corrections, misspellings, missing periods?
I don't see it.
If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, Mr. Henry.
Mr. Haney?
Aye.
You got to listen, young man. All right. All right, now we have public comment. We don't have any at all.
Nothing for any of them?
Nobody loves us anymore? Okay. Commission member comments. I'd like to start by saying that I would appreciate everyone saying a small prayer for the officer that we shot on Thursday. I got a little update from the sheriff before the meeting. He's doing good, but he's still in critical condition. He still needs prayers, and his family needs a lot of prayers. So something I wish we all could do this Thanksgiving season.
Could also add that if anybody wants to donate to Officer Watts Recovery Fund, on Facebook, there is a page called Oconee County Sheriff's Office -SC. It's got about 10,000 followers. If you go on there, there's a post of him hugging his baby or kissing his baby. And if you go under that text, there's a donation link down there in blue that you can go to and donate.
Yep. Anyone else?
I would like to just say, that Thanksgiving is a special time, and certainly a terrible thing that's happened to Officer Watts, but it makes us all realize how thankful we are for our families and friends, and that the good Lord keep us in his care. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yes, I'll second that one. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Don't eat too much turkey. It'll make you fat. Okay. We have staff comments.
We do. Got a new subdivision to share with you guys this evening. You have it pulled up for you already. This is Monticello, and it's off of Sheep Farm Road. This is 60 lots. I'm gonna pull up the zoning map as well and kind of just show you, before we go over it. So this triangle and these two cul-de-sacs, we will use as reference when we get in here. So this is the same parcel, and you'll see the triangle at the top, and then these two cul-de-sacs as your reference point.
Could you zoom out a little bit,
Yes.
see where this is?
So
Thank
going
you.
up is
Diamond Road,
Okay,
Sheep Farm Road,
to
and
20.
28.
gotcha.
This is the existing Camelot Drive. right here, so there's one subdivision this will back up against.
Oh, got it, okay.
And happy to entertain any questions.
Is sewer going that far as it stands, or are they gonna have to bring sewer in?
I'm not familiar with the sewer in that area. They will have to be on sewer based on the lot sizes.
Which are,
So these are quarter of an acre, 1/18 of an acre, 0.18,
Oh, townhouses.
0.24. These are all gonna be typically less than a quarter of an acre.
so big enough for 2 flies, and that's about it.
We've got some larger parcels down at the end of these cul-de-sacs, but in general, these are gonna be pretty small lots.
Looks more like a mobile home park than a house park.
Can you zoom on to the original GIS? The Camelot, some of these coming in, not on the, how big are the lots in Camelot that's existing there, some of those?
This is a quarter acre lot, so a lot of these are gonna be
0.2.
consistent,
So it's gonna be real similar to that.
yes.
Okay.
How big are the homes they're planning on building, do you know? You don't?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else with anything on this, and then we'll move on? Okay, so, we started working on the agricultural exempt map. Pretty close to having something that'll be presentable for you guys to look at for your next meeting. Right now, we've identified over 8,300 parcels that are getting an agricultural exemption. The majority of those are gonna be over 10 acres, but we're gonna put them all on and start working on some of the tables and get a map ready for you guys to look at for your next meeting.
Okay. That's all?
That's it.
All right. Discussion regarding agenda items for planning commission workshop. It's been requested we have a workshop on development in the county. We need approximately 3 subjects to talk about at this meeting. James, have you got any responses?
So we have talked individually to a couple of the commission members, and I think there's some people that have some ideas that they'd like to bring up.
Let's just open the discussion right now.
It's open for discussion right now.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, and James, I hope you feel comfortable breaking in on the conversation as this takes place, but right now, I'm thinking in terms of these large developments, like what has scared the community out at Highway 130. And I'm thinking, well, what can we do to try to keep those kinds of things from happening, especially without any public input? So, I was thinking, well, maybe we could look at the process that we're using now and determine if there's some things that we could change which would allow for further approval. So let's say at a certain level of, a number of lots or something, that and this is just coming up with something on my own, I think somebody else's idea might be better, but, let's say at something like 250 lots, James then triggers, okay, well, this is something that's gonna have to be an additional approval process, which would allow for the public to come in and say, what it is that they fear about that particular, development, or the good, the bad, the ugly, maybe, Anyway, that's the idea. Maybe somebody could take it and shoot it down and say, well, that's not a good idea, and here's the reason why. That's fine. Or maybe add to it and say, well, yeah, there's other things that we, you know, after 10 lots, we have these things, but, and so we have a precedence for using a number as a way of saying, hey, you've got to get additional, study done through the state, or you've got to get these other tick-offs for, you know what I mean by tick-offs is, there's things that are on the list that have to be approved before you can get final acceptance. So, I may not have explained that very well. And if you need me to go a little bit more into an example or something like that, I'd be glad to try to do it. But I would just in summary say that I'm talking about reviewing the present process and determining if there's something in that process that could be changed in order, and it would probably take an ordinance change, or an additional ordinance to make this happen, I realize that. But at least allow for public input of these large developments, so that before final approval, the community has input as to whether or not they want this. Okay, that's all I've got to say right now. Do you have any feedback?
What I'm hearing is you'd like to look at the application process for new larger subdivisions.
Yeah, and then
find a way.
looking for ways for additional public input before a final decision can be made, whether it be made through the county council, planning commission, then the council, or whatever the process structure would be. But you're right, you know, looking at those larger developments that are scary and saying, do we really want this? And, you know, so that just because let's say they've got 2,000 lots that they plan on putting in, just because they met the criteria and got all the boxes checked, James has to say, yes, go ahead. There needs to be something that says, with this big of a development, we've got to have additional public input. That's the idea. Does everybody understand where I'm coming from? Okay.
There needs to be more eyes on those types of developments than just the few that are on them, because just taking this big one on 130, if it goes through, everything gets built, Duke Power has a serious problem with, that they have to tell everybody to get their butt out of there. Those people don't have anywhere to go. You can't get that many people on a 2-lane road and get them out safely without causing serious harm to life and limb. I mean, and there's no way to on that particular situation, there's no way to widen that road. So I agree, we need to come up with some kind of mechanism to where they just need to look and see if that's the safest way or safest place, or I don't know, something on those big subdivisions, no matter where they are, not just there on that road, but anywhere else in the county. Because, I mean, I'm a firm believer in, I bought the property, I do with it what I want to, but you don't do things on your property that affects others that have property around you, or for that matter, others in this county. I mean, there's a lot of people been in this county a lot longer than I have. But, we need to come up with some rules somewhere. Just letting everybody do what they want to when they want to needs to come to a slight halt. Go ahead.
I think we need to look at what do we want the county to look like? Where are we heading? Where do we want to be in 10 years? Do we want a county full of developments that are 1/8 acres? You know, you're gonna look like Myrtle Beach pretty soon.
Ringville.
And, I think we need some density standards. You know, if you had across the board density standards, then they'd at least have to apply to the zoning board of appeals to be able to change, to get a different density. Yeah. That's it. I just, it seems like we need a better plan of what we want to look like as a county. You know, you drive up and down these roads, and what are they building? They're building a lot of warehouses and garages and
Storage.
storage. You know, that's my 2 cents.
We talk a lot about the property on 130. I don't want to mislead the public. Does that property, has it been determined if they've got vested rights to do what they want to do?
I don't know that it has been looked at for vested rights. I think that it's been looked at for whether or not they have a viable sketch concept for the plan that they're presenting.
I thought they had presented it about 8 years ago.
I think that that was an initial plan with a development agreement that has since expired, and I believe that they are continuing to move forward with a modified plan at this point.
Okay. The only reason I ask that is I don't want us to talk about it in such a way as to give a misconception that we're working on that project. I think we should be working on all projects around the county at large.
So if you guys recall,
Sorry?
I said, if you guys recall, I tried to come up with a standard, an actual change to the ordinances that we could actually, that's tangible, not this pie in the sky, we want to do this, we want to do that. Some actual change to the ordinances that would limit densities of subdivisions. And it would also, the good thing about it was would also have, not taking away rights from the property sellers to the subdividers or developers.
I would love it for you to bring that one back so
So-
that it is one of the discussion items.
Here's what killed it, and we need to figure out if we can work through the issue that killed it. The issue that killed it was, there were a couple things. One was, we set the acreage at 30 acres, okay? So the lawyer said, well, what about a guy with 29 acres and 100 homes? You know, he gets a pass, but the guy with 30 acres and 61 homes does not. So how do you legally, as a county, address that? It's discrimination. Unless you can somehow say anything in general above 30 acres has much more of an adverse effect on county infrastructure, on it impact on the local and local conditions. There's some language in some stuff that in the ordinance is about impact on local or the area, adverse impact on the area that you're putting it in versus something that's smaller. So I don't know how we draw that line.
I'd love to see that, what you had done, and go back and revisit that. But was it about the density of the parcel, or was it about the number of homes that are gonna be trafficked on a particular area, road?
It was not discriminatory to a particular area. It was strictly based on greater than a certain amount of acres, 30, I think is what we said, and greater than 2 homes per acre on that acreage. So it would be something larger than X and more dense than Y, that criteria.
And then it triggered something.
And that triggered, if that were a purchase, if it were a commercial purchase, it was a purchase of a property, an uncontrolled property, if it were a purchase with the intent of commercially selling those lots to individual buyers as a developer, then it triggered that acreage going into residential zoning.
Oh, it automatically went into
Yes.
a particular.
Right.
So the lawyer
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
well, that's really, what he called that was,
Spot zoning.
not spot zoning, he called it, some kind of other zoning, like, whatever it is, if it's triggered.
I think
by
it'd be worth
something.
reintroducing, but I would want us to define whether we were talking about acreage or if we were talking about impact. In other words,
Yeah, and the other
does it
thing
matter
that
that it's 29 or 30 acres, or does it matter that it's 60 homes versus 40 homes or
Right,
20
and
homes?
we could even set the acreage higher and say, this is a significant impact to the community relative to this. And that would have to be our legal argument, though. These guys would have to defend it. So anything that we do is gonna have to be in the ordinances. And it's gonna have to be legally defendable by the county as not discriminatory. And I think that's the biggest barrier that we're trying to overcome and trying to essentially make it a bit more onerous for somebody to come in here and put a huge development with a high density number of homes. Now, do I think are there concerns on my part and the public on affordability? Yes, it's gonna affect affordability. I mean, if we keep developments like this one we just looked at from coming in, which I think might meet the criteria, maybe not, it might not be big enough. That's a bunch of affordable homes that somebody won't be able to move into.
The
So,
one we just looked at was a good example. That was what, 25 acres?
I gotta go back and look at it.
and see, the other thing is that if they do it if they're smart enough to do it in phases, they could work around that ordinance, right? If they said, okay, 29, 29, 29, and you got three, Camelot 1, 2, and 3, they've just worked around the ordinance.
25
How
acres.
many?
And while that is true, and I'm not an expert at that, but I would think that there may be a workaround for the smaller guys that are trying to do it, but for the real big guy, well, his equipment's there, he wants to roll on the whole thing. And so he's either probably,
Right.
I would think he would do an all or nothing, if it was like what we're talking about, the 130 thing.
So we have, in the ordinances, we have a checklist that they have to go through. And they have to check off each of these criteria that the subdivision meets it.
I would love to see
And
that.
it's pretty easy to get through that checklist.
I
is
would
it
love
not?
to see that be part of the workshop discussion as to what legal mechanism could trigger something going into particular zoning.
And the other thing that the lawyer pointed out, wisely so, is if you start you want subdivision, you want dense subdivisions in the municipalities, you actually want them there. You don't, and these are, the ones we're looking at are on the outskirts of Seneca. What you don't want is the monster, what I think we are saying we don't want, and the public is saying they don't want, is these monster subdivisions that are way outside the city limits. For example, the one that they're talking about on Highway 130. That's just an example. There are others. So you want to encourage the high density to be closer to the municipalities. So that's something we need to consider too. But what the lawyer was saying was if you put a high density subdivision, or if you discourage high density subdivisions, then you get urban sprawl, because then people have to develop on larger acreages.
In truth, whether we like it or not, the best way to do this is zoning. And you create a denser zone closer to the municipality, it pushes people who want to do a high-density development closer to the municipality, and you have more relaxed rules as you go out, and it's zoning. And is anybody willing to take that on again? Who knows? But that's truly the way you would do it as a.
And sometimes government control can just backfire, so you don't get the desired effect,
Right.
because you don't understand fully what it is you're trying to do.
I would love to revisit and
Not
see if
easy.
there's a workaround with what you had proposed months ago.
Okay, guys, remember, we're talking about 3 subjects possible for this.
So I'm gonna say 3 subjects: size, density, and something else that y'all wanna pick.
Okay.
Well, process is what I recommend. I don't think we have a handle on what the current process is, but if we look at it with an eye towards how can we change it to get more public input before a decision is made on approval.
But they can't do it as being like the part of the process. They have to have a law to go by or an ordinance to go by.
Well, I realize-
to be able to add the process.
So what I'm proposing, I don't know if I said that, it would be an ordinance change or an additional ordinance that would have to be created in order to change the process that we have now to something else.
I think, Gary, what Britt's trying to say though is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Britt. So if let's say we created an ordinance that says, for a given subdivision size, proposed subdivision size, you have to communicate this via public notice. So let's say you do that, and now the public comes in on new subdivision Z, which is huge, and they have a public outcry. Well, there ain't much we can do as the county, because we have no ordinances in place that measure the amount of public outcry, and therefore, as a result, say we can't do the subdivision, allow the
I
subdivision.
agree with what you're saying, but the only thing is if we don't bring this one in, it's losing an opportunity for discovery of what it is that we could do to change things.
So communications, you're talking about the communications process with the public.
Well, I feel like there needs to be something, I can't necessarily put a pin on it, as to a change, which would be, have to be a legal change, of course, that would allow an ordinance change, which would create a situation where there would be public input before the approval process.
Mike.
I just want to say one other thing. I'm supposing that there's other counties and other places that are doing something similar to that. I don't know. I mean, I think there must be some legal procedure.
I suspect there are other counties doing it. I also think the idea is a cool idea. It seems like, and we would need to get Mr. Root's understanding, for his understanding on this, that the way our county is set up with our ordinances, the reason we don't have input is the particular governance of our county. So for us to have a bunch of the public sitting up there when we don't have control of it after they complain might be problematic. The other thing we would want to double check on is this by nature would have the effect of pushing heavy density in the outskirts versus where we want them next to the municipalities, and this is why I say that. We have 200 or 300 homes coming in, high density. If it comes up near the municipality, there's hundreds of residents around there. I would venture Vegas would tell you that 99 out of 100 are going to be negative comments standing at that podium. The only way for the developer to get that high density is to go out in podunk nowhere where there's only 3 people that border his property, and those 3 people didn't show up because they're feeding their cows. And so by creating something like that, we are truly saying you've got to go build out in the middle of nowhere. And now we are affecting fire stations and schools and impacts. The government getting involved in something has just created something bad, potentially.
I'm willing to accept that it's not necessarily the best idea to talk about that right now. Now, there might be something else. For example, the leadership of one of the council members has said that they're looking at the possibility of development standards for lighting and green space and, some kind of barrier or trees or vegetation that kind of hides the development. So with that kind of leadership, maybe we could be proactive in trying to discuss that further. So, I mean, I'm just saying, maybe the first idea I came up with is not gonna be the best use of our time right now, based on what y'all are saying, so I'm willing to take it off.
And I don't know, I'm just playing devil's advocate through the process. I like all the options that are coming in. One thing that I do kind of observe is like Mr. Markovich had mentioned some time back, development in this county the way it used to be, you look at a neighborhood, say like a waterside crossing over by the lake, however many homes that are in that, that's a big neighborhood, but nobody's complaining about it because there are lots of trees and lots of growth and things like that. The neighborhoods that we often hear about are either this monstrosity that this big ball that nobody really knows how to deal with, or we hear people complain because they just saw the forest next door get clear cut and people are moving dirt in massive amounts. So maybe it is about green space and clearing.
Okay, so planning commission workshop, 3 items. You guys keep feeding ideas, but I'm gonna say subdivision density, subdivision size, the whole subdivision size, and subdivision proximity to the municipalities, or location, if you will. We want the subdivisions that are high density and large to be near the municipalities.
Because that's where all the utilities are,
Well,
at this point in time.
Right,
The
and
sewer
it
all that.
it helps protect farmland. It puts them where the utilities already and infrastructure already are. It allows the cities to, if they so choose, and if the subdivision wants, it allows them to annex it and become a part of the municipality as opposed to being part of the county's expenses. So I think those are things we need to look at. Those 3 things we need to look at.
Anyone else?
yeah, I think everybody's dancing around the issue, and I think Mike already said it. Zoning is the great regulator of density. There's just no way about it. I mean, and you're talking about where to put stuff, and I don't know why there's such a fear with the word zoning, because all it is a planning. It's just a planning function. So is it rural residential or traditional rural? What's that, 1 house an acre? I forget the, which.
1 and 5 and 1 and, yeah.
Well, if it's 1 and 1, and if that property, Walhalla Junior, I call it the one on 130, if that was, okay, it's 770 acres, if that was zone traditional rural at 1 house an acre, we'd be talking about 770 homes versus almost 2,000. That helps with the zoning. It's still a big number, but it might be more manageable. In terms of where to go, a developer with a big development's gonna want sewer, and he's gonna want to develop where that sewer is, I would imagine, and the utilities.
Which are not always around a municipality.
Sewer is always around.
No.
Well,
I mean,
That's not,
if it's big enough though, you look at Kiwi Key, who has their own, you look at, the pier,
The pier.
which has its own,
what is Foxwood?
what's that?
Foxwood Hills, what do they have?
Foxwood has their own.
Foxwood
They
has
have their
their own.
How many residents are in Kiwi Key? Just out of curiosity.
Is it 2,000? Is it
Sir,
2,000?
hang 1 second. Yes, sir, go ahead.
So I hear what everybody's saying about creating these restrictions to try driving the development where we want it. My question is, and I'm new to this, is what incentives can we have to make the developments develop in the areas we wish? And have we identified those areas? And because my fear is, as we create these density standards, if we do it across the board, it's going to greatly impact farmland, because there are people moving into the county and into South Carolina. South Carolina's rated one of the top places to move to. So therefore, because of the lack of land available, the overall cost of land is going to go up. So it's going to benefit the farmers to quit farming and start selling off more of the property. That's my fear with density standards. And I would like to know more about what tools we have to direct development in the areas that we wish to be developed. And the other thing is, whether it be in this workshop or another one, I kind of think we need to plan where we want developments. I know we got the zones, opportunity zones, but outside of the opportunity zones, where else are we wanting development? And what tools do we use to ensure that developments happen there and not in places that we've not planned for, or at least try to deter?
Well, I think you look at a zoning map and you see what's naturally occurred where. Manufacture here, residence here, commercial here, community facilities here. And those are your districts, and then within each one of those districts is your zoning regs. But then your
Yeah,
farm,
we just need a map of that. Right now, I don't think we
I don't
have.
think we have one like that, do we? Not with all those things. I mean, that, we need that because the zoning districts come as a result of the planning of the bigger ones at large. That's how I understand it.
I mean, that's the purpose of all the, these three parks that we have, was to have business go into this, the one down in Fairplay, have business go to the one on 11. Well, not one, there's a couple on 11, but that seems to be where everybody wanted business, and now businesses wanting to be other places, so. Go ahead.
So I think we're into the workshop details. We're trying to pick three big subjects.
I got different subjects, got like.
I propose three big subjects. If you guys don't agree with them, let's come up with
Well,
different
everybody
ones.
gets three.
Say again?
Everybody gets the three.
So, whoever's turn?
Go ahead.
So to follow Mr. Haney there with what he was talking about, and with the three subjects that you've already proposed, he had asked about what are the current tools. Maybe in that workshop, we're talking about the current tools and then missing tools. So under size, we do have some tools. We have road standards and things like that that have to fit within certain sizes. Under density, we do have current tools. It's our current zoning of residential or traditional residential or things like that. Those are the tools. Then we identify what's are missing. So those three topics are cool because we already have some tools that we could then see what tools are missing.
Okay.
Well, that kind of segues into what I was thinking is, it seems like, and I got this idea from Ms. Spicer, hope you don't mind me bringing it up,
No, go ahead.
as something for us to talk about. What about putting a moratorium on any other development until we get this thing figured out?
It's not legal.
Quickest way to get sued.
Yeah,
That's the
No,
best way to get
if we
the
have a
attorney work.
reason and a time frame, I'll tell you what,
That's what Mr. Root said, is that you have to have a reason, which we think our reason would be looking at a comprehensive plan.
well, the comp plan comes up for review next year for sure, but can I just, this is what spurred this,
So can I ask
Thought in
real
my
quick, the
head.
legal time frame is what, 90 days?
no, 6 months.
It is, there is not a legal time frame. You have to establish a time frame based on what your reason for establishing. And
Is there a
We didn't
legal
come in
precedent?
talking about
There's a
workshop, but-
legal precedence that
So-
counties are getting sued if they go more than X number of days. And I'm just saying, we can't come up with a junkyard ordinance in 2 years. I'm not, if there's a short window, we need to be real careful about a moratorium or we
it
do get
needs to
sued.
be a reasonable time frame to complete the task with which you have established the basis of starting a moratorium. So for like Clinton or one of these cities that's having a sewer issue, where you're gonna have to expand a sewer treatment plant, that moratorium can be a lot longer because you're going through design and construction of a major project, right? If you wanna revise or change an ordinance, that's gonna be a much smaller time
But
frame because.
It's a major project that involves environmental health and safety or public health and safety.
So
That's
anyway,
what
go
a
ahead.
treatment plan
Ms.
is.
Okay,
So-
can I just read you something? Bear with me, this is from the comp plan, page 10, chapter 11. Oconee County has several ordinances in place related to land use regulation, including the zoning enabling ordinance, which regulates sexually oriented businesses, airport height, communication towers, group residential developments, tattoo facilities, and signs, and include land development and subdivision regulations. Administration and enforcement of these regulations can pose a challenge to staff as they navigate multiple ordinances that include redundancies and contradictory requirements and definitions. However, this also presents an opportunity to consolidate land use regulations into one comprehensive document to improve clarity, remove duplication, ensure consistency, and streamline staff review and administration. And, I think our current ordinances are ineffective and inadequate and shaky at best. They're just a skeleton of probably what we need. So if chapter 24, we could probably eliminate, and it's called planning and development because it says nothing. Chapter 38 and 32, maybe combine it into a unified performance ordinance, I think that's what it's called. But we need time to put some teeth into what we have and stop with this very skimpy guideline that we have. So I was thinking a moratorium, 6 months, we could get a professional in here to look at the inconsistencies and the redundancies and streamline the conversation for us. That's what I was thinking.
Okay, so if we put size, density, and moratorium as 3 things, and maybe 3 is not the right number, maybe it's 4 that we need for our first workshop. But that's something that I think I could vote for. I don't think we really need to talk about proximity to municipalities. Sorry, but that's just my feeling.
I think the big deal about proximity to municipalities is zoning, is the whole issue at hand. If the public is convinced that it's a good thing to go ahead and finish out these areas that are right next to municipality that more than likely is gonna get annexed at some point, it makes more, I think proximity is a discussion that we can have that segues to zoning.
I think that comes in your planning and where stuff is. I mean, and when I came here tonight, I was thinking things a little more specifically. I was thinking gun range. I would like a review of how gun ranges are based on the people who came. Both properties, the horse farm, the gun range, side by side, control-free. But the problem with control-free is you allow incompatible lifestyles to live side by side, and it's not working. So we need to change that, mitigate it somehow. Right now, the gun range has to get special exception if it's in certain districts or certain districts, but I would say no matter where it is, even if it's in control-free, it needs to get a special exception, which means going to the BZA and seeing if their plan is compatible with the character of the community, not just specifically if it's in the traditional rule or whatever. I'd like to see that happen.
That's the purpose of control-free zoning. It is no zone. That's the same way you would be if you wanted to do something on your property.
This
that you
conversation is
thought-
all about
hang,
zoning
hang.
tonight.
I didn't say anything when you were talking. It would be the same thing if it's you or anyone else. If you want to do something on your property, and it's your property, you're in a control-free zone, and you're not gonna be doing anything that physically harms any person, you'd want to do it. I'm not taking that for the gun range. It is a loud, obnoxious noise. It does scare horses. It does scare chickens. It does scare cats and dogs. But he is in a control-free zone. He went through the proper steps to get state approval and county approval. And the other people that live there, what they should have done, in my personal opinion, should have bought him out. Bought his property, then he couldn't have done it. But he has every right to do what he wants to with his property, as everybody else does to do with their property. I don't want somebody coming on my property and telling me I can't have my 15 chickens because my rooster crows at 5 o'clock in the morning and it wakes him up. But
I appreciate that sentiment, and I'm all for that, but property rights and the free use of property is limited in that you cannot encroach on somebody else's property rights. And that's what's happening on these 2 adjacent control-free properties. He's running his range, it's shooting, horse farm people do not have access to their land and their pastures because the animals get spooked. Those guys, Mr. Elliott, John Elliott, I forget his last name, presented that the value of his property has decreased because of the gun range. So where are their rights? So this is where property rights is good, but it's limited in that you can't encroach on somebody else's property rights. That's all.
So what do we do when a chicken house comes right beside your property? In my opinion, my property rights go down when that chicken house is right there because it stinks. Do I tell him he can't have his chicken house on his property? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
And what if, I mean, you can go, I don't know what to tell you. You were there first, and you would, I don't understand what you're saying. You would complain if the chicken house came to your property?
If a chicken house come in right beside my property and the chicken house itself doesn't bother you, but the smell, and some people, the smell of that chicken crap everywhere, it does bother people.
I would say that chicken house is probably protected by the Right to Farm Act.
So what?
So
He's
what?
bothering my property. He's decreased the value of my property because nobody wants to buy my property because they smell chicken crap all day long. So my property has went from, just say, $10,000 an acre to $2,000 an acre,
So would your neighbor say, tough luck, Frankie, you should have bought him out?
pretty much. Because it's all control-free.
That's where control-free is a big detriment to it.
But, I mean, I don't agree with chicken houses, with gun ranges to be right in a residential neighborhood, but if it's control-free property, you have a right to do what you want. That's why all this control-free property should probably never been. It should all been zoned something.
Absolutely agree with
But
that.
it wasn't. And
Doesn't mean it can't be.
there's not a council that sets up here that's willing to take on zoning everybody something that then they have limitations to do with their property. If they want to be zoned, they can zone. I don't know that this council or any other council is going to sit up here and go, heck, we don't care what you want, you're zone residential too, or you're zone agriculture. I don't think they're going to do that. That's why the majority of the property the majority of the county was zone control free, because you bought it, you paid tax on it, you should be able to do within limits of what you want to do with your property. And, go ahead.
I think it's interesting that we've been here 30 minutes and we can't come up with 3 ideas. I'm real concerned about this moratorium idea and us being able to come up with anything in a time frame. But I do think that, I do like the size, density, and location concept as 3 topics of conversation for a workshop. I don't know that the workshop is something that's gonna create the ordinance, so we may do 3 more the next month and have another workshop, but I think it's a good place to start.
I wouldn't worry about timeframes. I think if there was a moratorium issue, we would have guidance from a third party, some kind of consultant who can come and say, here are your redundancies, here are your inconsistencies. You need to streamline your ordinances take these 3 chapters and put them into one. And the third party, the consultant, if you will, I guess, could do that for us.
I've got a motion. Go ahead.
I think Britt
I'll
wanted
make
to
a
say.
motion.
I agree I think we need, when you were talking about the tools, we need to find out exactly what we have in an outline, not written out in an ordinance. Kind of like in an outline, what spells out what exactly we have to work with. And like you said, then we can go with where do we need to change it and how do we need to change it. So I would say that would be one of the items. And I don't know if you call that tools or.
I would say, don't we have that in our zoning matrix already? We have districts and we have a zoning matrix that identifies different zones. Is that what you're
Might
talking
be a
about?
subset of the other. You could talk about the tools for size, the tools for density, the tools for location. That's something that might be a subset.
Of each of those categories.
Okay.
All right, my motion is that our 3 subjects for the roundtable discussion, or whatever you want to call it, sit down and fuss a while session, density, size, location. To start with this very first one, and then we can, if we need another one in a later time, we can add other subjects to it.
Can we add to that motion?
Yep.
Can we also direct staff to list as a subset the current tools that exist in our ordinances that affect each of these 3 items? So we say, whoop, there's not anything under this category, or there's
Can't we
7
do that?
things under this one.
Why can't we do that as part of the workshop? Why can't we go through the ordinance and identify?
We
These
can, but I
things
think
for
we'll
our
spend all of our
education.
time, hours, going through something that staff is already aware of, because they probably deal with it every day.
Okay, that is the
I'd
motion.
second. Second that motion.
Are we discussing?
Open for discussion.
To do these specific things, we need the big picture districts in place. Do we have a map with any of that, James?
We have-
Commercial here, pardon
You
me?
talking about a future land use map or a current zoning map? Because those are the
Yeah,
only
a
ones-
zoning district, a zoning district, ag, commercial, community facilities,
So
ag.
we don't have like a concept for what a zoning map would look like if the county were to be zoned. We have the future land use map that's in the comprehensive plan, that's kind of a general crystal ball look at where we think things are going to happen. And we have the current zoning, which is where people have opted into zoning in those districts that exist, that are kind of pocketed and polka
And
dotted.
is that in a map,
Yes.
a printable map that says these are zoned this way, blue represents
Yep.
this? And I think that's what you were asking.
Yeah, so I think you need, have that first, and then you go within each district, and then you put your regs, right?
Okay, we can
That's what I'm
discuss.
thinking.
We can
The regs are already in the existing ones. We're just saying, what about the ones that aren't currently regulated, aren't currently zoned? What tools do we use for those areas?
So if you have ag, and you have a big green circle around where ag is in the county, you see where they naturally ag is, and then within ag, you say, okay, they've got ag residential and they've got an ag district. Those are the options for ag. It could eliminate all the control-free in ag, but you've got two choices, maybe ag, we came up with a third ag, one for every 5 acres, whatever it is.
Ag
And
one.
in that big green box of ag, you've got those specific regulations or land use regulations. Am I in the right track, James? Is that-
So we don't have that map that is by use. We have the current zoning that exists, so we have a map that shows all the parcels in the county that have been zoned and what they're zoned. And we have a future land use map, which is the closer to what you're talking about, but is not focused on current land uses, it's focused on what we think future build-out would potentially look at, and that was done 10 years ago.
It's on the wall.
Yeah, it is.
That's a 10-year-old map. See, everything's so outdated and old. That's why
Well,
we need to,
Not quite 10. They did that when they started the comp plan, the new comp plan, so it's about 4-ish. Right before the comp plan, they did that future land use map, so.
future land use doesn't help. It's where what's happening now, I would say. Industry's here, ag is here.
Can we get back?
Okay, we have a motion on the,
Yeah.
we have a motion on the floor.
The amendment is what we need to vote on first, Mr. Chair.
And the amendment says that, ask staff that under these 3 categories, that if there are existing controls or existing tools, what those tools would be under each of those 3 categories. Again, size, roads is a tool. Density, our current tools are these zoning categories.
Yeah, density is chapter 32 points to chapter 38, depending on what type of property it is, whether it's control-free or residential or whatever that you bought.
So those would be the tools, and just so that we know what tools are there. So we can then see what tools are missing that's causing all this other stuff.
Second, your amendment to the motion, original motion.
I already did.
Okay,
All right,
I call for the question.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mr. Haney?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. All right, now we're back to the original motion for these 3 subjects to be on our workshop at whatever date we
TBD.
when, sir?
To be determined.
To be determined.
Do we need a second on that?
We've already had a second.
Already got a second? Any further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And it's unanimous. All right, so we've basically got that out of the way for, at least until we get what date we're gonna do the workshop. Do we have any dates that we can decide on tonight? When,
Mr. Chair, just for the convenience of the commissioners, I was curious if we could possibly ask James to look at times before our meeting on the same dates of our regular meetings, and then that way we could just, with enough upfront time, we could get people, hopefully get off work a little early or whatever. Our meeting's at 6, so if we came in at 4, that would give us a couple hours.
when
So
we can,
anyway, that's my suggestion, is that we ask James to look at those.
does anybody object to that?
Sounds good, good idea to me.
Can you do that for us, sir?
So
We got
your
what,
only remaining meeting for this year is December 4th.
December is the only meeting on the 4th of December.
Seems like we might want to just postpone till January, because, let's say we have some really good discussions, and a bunch of time goes by, and then, we lose momentum. So I'm curious whether or not anybody else feels that way. Maybe postpone to January, second meeting in January.
I think this is really, things are kind of urgent, we should do it right away.
Our meeting is December the 4th.
December 4th.
What is on December the 11th? Who's
The
meeting
Agriculture Advisory Board,
at?
6.
Does anyone have an objection to having, including staff, have objection to having this meeting on the 11th of December at 4 o'clock from 4 to 5:30? That gives the
I think that-
system time enough to get back where they can have the meeting.
Frankie, I'd have to check, I think I'm out of town.
Or, I have no objection.
I'd check my-
I don't know, I work.
That's what I say, can you check and let us know something,
December the
at
11th.
least December the 11th? What other days would we have free, right in that same time period? Mr. James?
You've got the 18th. You could do your normal meeting that you canceled December 18th.
Y'all wanna do that? Now, we can do that, just
I can do
instead
that.
of having to cancel a meeting on the 18th, just have this workshop on the 18th. But have it at 4 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. Can we do that?
Should be. I want to double check with Jennifer and just make sure that there's not something going on that I don't know about. But
I mean, does anybody object to that,
That's a good day with me.
the 18th?
No.
All right,
and you got 2 folks that work. I don't know if they want to prefer 5 o'clock instead of 4 or 4:30.
Off that week.
What if we made it
What better time comes when I'm off, right?
We'll do it 4:30.
Nothing else to do.
What if we made it
Right?
5 to 7,
Oh, yeah.
come in an hour early and
Serve the public.
we're back to our, at 6 o'clock,
Did you say
we're
4
back to
o'clock?
regular time.
well, now we're getting a 5 to 7, so,
Oh, I don't care.
Well, I was just doing
All right,
that because some
let-
people have to work.
make sure, call me tomorrow.
That day.
Let me know if there's
It's not-
there's nothing there. And then we'll get in touch with everyone to make sure that, and we'll find out if it's 5 to 7 or 4 to 6.
Okay.
And we'll just set that up, okay?
4 to 6 sounds great.
Get
I can
Stevie home
do
for
either
supper.
one. I was just thinking about some people that might be working, might be easier for them to get here at 5. I
Nah,
could do either one.
he don't work, he can be here. All right, so let's do that. Y'all get in touch with, well, I'll tell you what, not me, get in touch with James tomorrow, and let him know that everybody's available for that date. And let him know when you want.
What date?
It'll be the 18th of December.
I'm good with the 18th.
And make
I'm good.
sure that you can do it from either 4 to 6 or
Can do
5 to
either
6.
one.
We really need to put it in the form of a motion and just vote on it.
Yeah.
All right, I
I
make a
agree.
motion that we have our table discussion on the 18th of December from 4 o'clock till 6 o'clock.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Will you set it up, sir? Thank you, Mr. Haney. All right, that'll be on the 18th. Now,
I make a motion to adjourn.
have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
2.
That's two.
You already did development center.
All those against?
Two, four. Motion fails.
Motion failed.
Okay.
We have item number 9, discussion regarding development standards. Now, we can do one of two things. We can hold off on this particular discussion until our workshop, because that's basically what we're gonna be discussing at the workshop. Or we can discuss it. I mean, y'all can,
I really think this is a topic for the workshop.
so
I was trying to figure out why it was on the agenda. It seemed redundant to me.
Exactly.
Who,
It's the same
somebody
thing.
called, somebody I talked to wanted to talk to something, and we made it just these standards rather than some, whatever it was. But anyway, let's, you wanna just take it, can we just cancel it, or just what, how do you do this?
Motion to amend the agenda to delete item number 9 and move directly to item number 10 to adjourn.
Second.
His head's a little,
All right,
I thought we were talking about it a little bit.
Yeah, who was the second? I'm sorry.
Me.
Thank you.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Same thing Brett wanted.
Motion passed. Mr. Haney?
Oh, well.
I did not hear what the motion was.
The motion was to basically delete item number 9 and go straight to adjournment.
I'm in favor of that.
Motion carries.
All right, so we are adjourned.